Hello, and welcome to the Hot Nerd Network, The First Word. I'm Phillip Parker,
And I'm PV Parker.
and we are here to do a recap on Ahsoka Episode 3. So, Phil, like I said, we're going to go just dive right in. This was a little shorter episode, and this is what Disney, or I guess the whole Star Wars franchise, when Disney started kicking them out in these TV episodes, sometimes you get extra long episodes, and then sometimes you get these short episodes. And this was a kind of a short episode. So I'm going to let you go ahead and take the first swing at this. Do you want to do knock out the episode recap? You want to recap this episode for the audience, or you want me to do it?
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead and recap. Go ahead. Go ahead and recap first.
Okay, so the recap for this episode, episode 3, was short in length, but long in information. And for me, what I got out of it. So we start off with Ahsoka and teaching Lady Wren. She's starting to get back her. She's going back in her basic training, her basic moves with the robot. How you pronounce his name? Is it Heiko? The robot with the new
Ahsoka's droid, basically.
right. I keep forgetting how to pronounce his name. But so, and he, she's going over the strikes in the strike zones. And I like what he tells her. He is so blunt. He's like, yeah, you wouldn't make it as a Jedi back in the day.
I think he said she was the worst he's ever evaluated. The worst he's ever evaluated. The
But
worst Jedi he's ever evaluated.
And so we'll get back into more. So then Ahsoka then going back to the roots of Star Wars, when we had Luke with the visor, learning how to use the Force. We see her put her visor on. Ahsoka tells her to put her visor on, and then Ahsoka does this go around. Now I have surround. I love surround sound, and as Ahsoka is going around the room, you hear the different speakers going off, and this is like oh wow, this is really good. And so they then go they're hyper warping into where they want to find Morgan, where they believe he is, and they then arrive and they see the construction of the big hyperdrive that that is like on a scale that we see that type of drive all throughout Star Wars lore, throughout all the movies, but this was like 100 times bigger to propel hopefully a bigger ship to do a bigger hyperdrive. So we get into a really good battle, a flying battle. I think that's what you wanted last season. You were talking, last episode, you were talking about that. And then, excuse me. So then also, we see them crash land on the planet, which again, this is fits the Star Wars, battle, crash land, fix the ship,
Right.
and then Morgan's the scene ends with Morgan sending his posse out to go take down Ahsoka. So that's pretty much the episode recap for episode number 3. I think it's gonna let it fly or let them fly or something like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's the recap for that particular one. Do you want to add anything to it? Did I miss anything?
No, not at all. Not at all. Let's get into it.
Okay, so next one up, I'm gonna let you take this. Do you have a favorite moment? A moment that was your favorite moment for you for this episode?
So this episode, to me, it draws back a lot on A New Hope, Star Wars: A New Hope.
Yeah.
There's a lot of callbacks, a lot of not flashbacks, but a lot of deja vu, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
One thing that I think sticks out to me, again, I like weird things and I find weird things interesting. One thing that I love that they do in Star Wars is they give us these platforms of time that
Mm-hmm.
you don't necessarily think of pockets of time, but follow me for a second. So,
Go ahead.
if you remember going back into A New Hope, whether it's any Star Wars film, they give us these pockets of time where, if you think about it, a distance in space is called a light year, basically. So when you
Yes.
travel from one end to the other in the galaxy, you're in hyper speed. You're going hyper warp drive, whatever the case may be. So during these periods of time, this is where we get a lot of training done with Jedi's, especially. So
Mm-hmm.
if you go back to, I think that's Return of the Jedi, when Obi-Wan was training Luke, um, with the same actual training that Ahsoka gave Lady Wren, with his lightsaber. You get you get these pockets of time where instead of, them going to cryo sleep or something else, they use this time to train. So I
Right.
just love how Star Wars kept that same mythos. And again, it's been, decades long between, these two films, and then, or not two films, but, two cinema. And I just love how that small that detail is, because you're trying to figure out, how do Jedi's really train? How do they get this training in a certain lifespan, covering the galaxy as well? And this is the prime time that they do that, is when they're traveling on spacecrafts or stuff like that. And it's a lot of downtime, and we find out this is where they do a lot of their training, especially lightsaber training.
Right. Right. Um, for me, one of my favorite moments was and I don't want to. We're gonna bring it. It's probably gonna come up again, but at the beginning of the episode, we had Ahsoka training Wren,
Hmm.
but then when they got into the battle, the battle in space, we find out that Wren says, "Oh, I see you got rid of my presets," which
Hmm.
tells you that again gives you there's some backstory there. And she said, "Well, I didn't need them," but then Ahsoka, again, as a father, the best thing that you can do with your Padawans is to
Hmm.
learn from them, to lean into them, to trust them. And I like that because Ahsoka was trying to fly the ship to evade and elude, to get closer to the hyperdrive, so that I know I pronounced his name wrong. Hyken, the robot, Ahsoka's droid, so that
Hmm.
they can get more scans. And so she wasn't doing it; they were about to get blown up. And she said, "You know what? What do you need?"
Right.
Ahsoka said to later on, "What do you need?" He says, "Okay, fine." So to me, my favorite moment is when Ahsoka, right then and there, you know, got rid of her ego, know
Hmm.
her limitations, and she knows. And they this is the third episode where, and again, kind of for me, well, we're gonna get to the predictions, but to me, let Wren be Wren.
Hmm.
Don't make her fit in this cookie cutter box. Let Ren be Ren. And so when Ahsoka said, "You know what? I'm doing it wrong. I'm not getting it done. What do you need?" And she said, "Well, I need you to do this, this, this." And then they start winning the battle. So that was my favorite. That was probably my one of my favorite moments.
So also, another favorite moment. Again, I like small, minute detail.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Again, they have a lot of callbacks to Return of the Jedi and A New Hope, where when Ren hops into the blaster.
Mm-hmm.
So that is actually a call. I think I keep getting the two movies confused or intertwined. I think that's Return of the Jedi, but basically it's
Now,
a callback.
New Hope. It's New Hope.
It's a
I know.
New Hope. A New Hope.
New Hope.
Okay.
We it did because, and I saw that too. I'm sorry. Go ahead. I don't want to step on your tongue.
No,
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 go
no.
ahead.
You're
Go ahead.
fine. You're fine. You're fine. When Han Solo was trying to evade Galactic Empire ships as well, and they needed to get away. They hopped into the chamber, and then doing all the different moves and trying to track different ships down. I just thought that was a pure callback to A New Hope as well. So I just thought they did a real good job of bringing that parallel back into focus.
Yeah, and it goes back to what we've been saying so far. This is our second episode, but it
Hmm.
goes back to how Dave Filoni and John Favreau keep you can have the roots again for the purists out there, and I don't believe there's purists. I mean, there's always people always take something and just make it their own. But
Hmm.
even for the raw purists, they are doing a really good job of keeping to the roots of
Hmm.
Star Wars, and I like that.
I,
Um, our next thing I want to get into is your impressions and your reactions about this particular episode. Do you have any specific impressions or reactions to this specific episode?
So, my first reaction is I did enjoy this episode. It showed not only the acceptance of Ahsoka, that she does have a Padawan now,
Hmm.
um, but it also showed the curiosity and the possible power of Wren. And I say this
Hmm.
because we know that, well, we think we know that Wren is not force sensitive. So instead of, trying to put a square peg into a round hole,
Right.
Ahsoka is just basically like, don't force trying to create the force or try to use the force. Let it come to you. It's not something that's particularly tangible. I think that's what
Hmm.
she's trying to get to Ren, is that the force is not something tangible. Just because there's a cut there,
Hmm.
um, you can't necessarily move it.
Hmm.
It's how you move it, if that
Hmm.
makes sense.
Yeah, no, it
Um,
does. Yeah, yeah.
so I just thought that this episode to me is a great callback because it kind of drew me back to when Luke was trained by Yoda,
Hmm.
and a lot of Yoda's trainings were unorthodox.
Hmm.
Whereas when he trained with Obi-Wan, when Luke trained with Obi-Wan, it was more tactical. It was more, he used his lightsaber, he used his force powers, but Yoda really strengthened Anakin, or not Anakin, he really strengthened Luke's mind. And I think that's where Ahsoka is trying to tap into Ren, where, she has certain trainings, she has certain abilities already, but she doesn't have the ability to exercise her mind yet.
Right.
Um, so that's something that I really draw. I kind of like the direction that they're going. They didn't give her, these absurd powers, to start off with. She has to, crawl before she walks.
Yeah. Um, I think so. Some of my initial or impressions and reaction is I like this particular episode
Hmm.
because now we're in episode number 3, and
Hmm.
so I think they got the backstory stuff out the way,
Hmm.
and they do the setup, and so now we're starting. The momentum is starting to build, and my impression reaction for episode number 3 was
Hmm.
now we're getting into the meat of the story and
Hmm.
how we're going to start building it. And so I like that. I like how it's not rushed. And again, it goes back to it was only 36 minutes long total. When you look at what the plot story, um, and again, sometimes what they say less is more. Instead of
Hmm.
trying to build it out to be an hour or 42 minutes or whatever, they said, you know what, we got what we wanted in episode 3. Let's move on. Let's move on.
Hmm.
So I like that.
So I think another thing I thought, well, I was forecasting, but one thing I thought that you would draw from this episode, especially, is the Japanese culture in
Oh
this
God,
episode.
yes, yes.
So for our audience, if you guys don't know, my dad is a huge Japanese martial arts fanatic. Grew up watching kung fu movies, martial arts movies. Um, very nostalgic to him. So when it comes to the samurai aspect, I even thought that, and this is where I thought you were going to start off at. So you kind of threw me for a monkey wrench. Um, the way Ahsoka decided to train Ren on the ship.
Yeah,
So if we even go back to um, when they had the Jedi Council and they had the younglings training. The younglings used lightsabers even as toddlers. They used the droids as their targets. They still had the face shield where they couldn't see. They had to rely on their force abilities, but they used lightsabers. And so Ahsoka didn't use that. She used, I think it's called a Kyokin, I think it's
yeah.
called, but it's a wooden, basically a wooden sword, instead of using a lightsaber. And I just thought that was a nice little touch to not only, you know, show how basic Ahsoka is taking it, but it gives a little bit of a culture of just Japanese lore. You know, we get so engulfed in the tech
Mm-hmm.
of
Mm-hmm.
Star Wars that something as small and basic as just a regular sword is really fascinating. You know, you have this basic weapon when you have a litany of technological weapons that
Mm-hmm.
you can use from. So I just thought that was a nice added touch, and I also thought that it was a nice kind of drawback for when Ahsoka's droid, again I can't remember his name, but he was training her, and he broke out the four different arms just like Grievous did.
Yeah, just like Grievous. Yeah, 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 yeah.
So it kind of got me to thinking that maybe this droid wasn't necessarily always, a Jedi droid. Maybe he was built for by the Galactic Empire, and then Ahsoka got her hands on him and then reprogrammed him. But the his
No, no,
his
no,
his makeup.
no. Because no, he is an original. So if you go back to the Clone Wars,
Hmm.
so one of the things that he's mostly responsible for training Padawans to um take the crystal and building their own lightsaber. So no, he is
Uh,
an original droid. He is a Jedi droid, and throughout this episode, you hear him quote standard Jedi procedures for this, standard
right.
Jedi procedure for that. So that particular portion, he is an original droid. And again, if you watch some of the Star Wars, the Clone Wars, then you can really get back to him.
I do remember now. I think I caught an episode of Rebels where he did the younglings were choosing their crystals, and I think the one I thought that was kind of funny to the side, but the one that was the same species as Chewbacca, he decided to get a wooden lightsaber. So
Hmm.
I do remember that. I do remember that.
Hmm. So but no, just to put a to put you said, I didn't even think of it that way,
Mhm.
and to for Ahsoka to train with the wooden sword and to go back to some of the older techniques. So yeah,
Right.
that was a good pickup on your part. That was damn good. I'll take the next one. The next one we're going to have is the plot analysis, and again, I've been alluding to it throughout so far in this particular episode, this recap. And again, the plot analysis for me, it's called Time to Fly. As I was looking at it, it's called Time to Fly.
Time to fly.
This episode is called Time to Fly. So my plot analysis is kind of I think I stole my own thunder when what I was going to say earlier is that that again this plot says to me is they are looking in episode 3, they are starting to work well together. It's
Hmm.
been a number of years, and I'm going to take your strength, you're going to take my strength, and then we're going to, because the only way Ahsoka, and Hera told her that in episode 1, and I think even in this episode, Hai Yen, I think
Hmm.
that's the robot name, said that that she is that she that you Ahsoka comes from a line of unorthodox Jedi. So
Hmm.
Wren fits right in. She fits
She
right
does.
into that whole. So my plot analysis that again I said this in our last podcast is I think that Ahsoka is going to be the foundation of the new Jedi and how
Mm.
to the roots of it. Because you just said it.
Hmm.
She's training with the wooden swords.
Hmm.
She's not using the lightsabers. She's teaching them. She's teaching Sabine how to use her force to start feeling her force and to go around the room. And I love that. So my plot analysis for this episode was I think this is a foundation because they keep saying it, and, for different reasons. I'm not a Jedi. Um, you're no Jedi that I know. And again, again, her Hayen says, that Ahsoka, you come from a long line of unorthodox Jedi. So this, to me, like you said, we know how Luke ends up. We know
Hmm.
we know how that ends up. So
Hmm.
and I kind of like that because to me, I really feel as though That's what was wrong with the Jedi from we got our inception was they became too too steeped in
Mm-hmm.
the found the politics of it. Even again, I'm off target here from the plot analysis, but even during the Clone Wars, they said, this is not we're not supposed to be generals. We're supposed to be
Mm-hmm.
peacekeepers. We're not supposed to be out here fighting, and so they got away from their roots. So, but that was my quick analysis. The plot for this particular episode was that they are laying John Favreau and Dave Filoni are laying the foundation that one Ahsoka would keep on going, and she would start building the whole Jedi again, but in you be you. You don't have to, like
Mm-hmm.
you just said earlier. Don't try to fit around a square peg in a round hole. You be you.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my plot analysis so far. What about you?
So, for this episode, I think it's twofold. So, I think in episodes 1 and 2, we did our world building because if you think about it, we went to different planets. We even traveled different galaxies. Um, so, episode 1 and 2 did a lot of world building. Episode 3, to me, it did a lot of character building. We got introduced to a lot of different characters in episode 1 and 2. Um, Two new ones in um, the apprentice and the master underneath of Morgan. Um, so we got a little bit of character building in this episode. You know, it starts out with Wren and Ahsoka in the ship, and then we also get some character building with Ahsoka's droid. You know, he actually, we can see the continuity between him and Ahsoka, where Ahsoka's like, we need to go. I think when he was downloading the information about the jump drive, um, Ahsoka was like, "Come on, we gotta go," and he's like, just a little bit more, just a little bit more. So they have that camaraderie between each other. But even when we go down on the planet when they crash land, um, you just see the camaraderie, the character building between the two on the planet, and I think that's something that we didn't necessarily get episode 1 and 2. Like I said, I
Mm-hmm.
think episode 1 and 2 we were pretty much just getting introduced to everybody. Because the last time we saw Ahsoka was in Mando,
Mm-hmm.
and we were like, well, who's that chick? Where did she come from? What's her story? And now we're starting to get a little bit of that back. So I think they did a very good job in this episode, just giving us a little bit of not only backstory, but giving us a tangible rope between how all these pieces are starting to fit together.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that. I like that.
Mhm.
I'll let you take the next segment is
Okay.
character highlights. What particular highlights did you have, or do you have any character highlights in this particular episode?
So with this one, I think Ahsoka definitely did steal the show. When it came to, um, I guess for me, when it comes to seeing how masters train their Padawans, right? The gold standard to me is always going to be Obi-Wan. Uh, the way Obi-Wan um, trained Anakin, to me, that's the gold standard. So this to see how Ahsoka went outside the ship when they were getting attacked,
Yeah, that was pretty
and
cool. Yeah,
she,
yeah, yeah.
and she was taking those boys down with her two lightsabers down. The left side of my brain was like, come on, really? Like you're out on, on the ship in space, and
Well. No, let me stop you there. Again, Clone Wars. That was a tactic she learned from Anakin. So
right.
what happened was one of the earlier, I want to say season one, was
Hmm.
when they was battling Grievous, and Grievous had this big machine that was a prelude to the Death Star. And so what it would do is it sent out this EMP pulse, electronic
Okay.
pulse, and neutralized all the ships. And so what happens is so one of the ways to beat Grievous is that Anakin came up with this thing to let Grievous ship pass, and then he came behind and used the walkers, and they got outside the ship, outside the walker, and they started battling Grievous that way. So I get what you're saying, but that was a tactical something she learned when she was with Anakin in Clone Wars Episode 1. But go ahead, go. I get your point though. I get your point. Go ahead, go ahead.
It was now I love this the scenery of it. I love the cinematography behind it. Everything about it was pretty good. It's just I just thought that that was kind of over the top. That was her. I think each Jedi have like their over the top moment, like when Yoda fought Palpatine, and he took off his cloak and homeboy went to town. I think every Jedi has that one shining moment, like dang, like I'm the real deal. I don't even to be messed with, and I think that was hers. But also, I just think the care. We see the trainings of a master uh, when it comes to tactical and um, how they use their weapons, but also how to use your mind. And like I said, I think that it's a key moment because when Yoda trained Luke, again he tried to get Luke to use his mind. So to you know for when Yoda when he rose the X-wing fighter out of the swamp,
Mm-hmm.
that was something. As a kid, you're watching, you're like, wow, that's something amazing, and to see Ahsoka in that moment when they're just talking and she's able to, maneuver her cup around,
Mm-hmm.
and then you see Wren struggling to do it. It's just it's something minute, with a cup per se,
Yeah.
but it means everything in the grand scheme of things. It means everything. So I just
Yeah.
thought that these little things that they're bringing along with Ahsoka. I think her character, Ren is Ren. Her character is coming along, but I think we're seeing little parts of Ahsoka to even go back to your point where she can implement these into her Jedi teachings down the road.
Okay. Um. Again, we're just rolling along here. So I'll take the next one. No, I'll take the next one. Um. Unanswered questions, and actually, I'm gonna steal it because I know what you're going to say.
Okay.
And so, for me, the only unanswered question that was who's the Inquisitor?
Okay.
I know you think your theory is that it might be Ezra somewhere.
Okay. Okay.
And so for me, just a quick and down and dirty, because that individual has a little bit more speaking parts this time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
He's like, "Where are they?" or "I lost
Right.
them," or something to that effect. It was very limited, but now he has a speaking role. So he's an inquisitor. We're just trying to
Mm-hmm.
figure out who, because we know the backstories of the inquisitors.
Right.
So we just gotta that for me. So that, to me, that's the unanswered questions so far that they posed in this particular episode. What about
So are
you?
we are we going? Okay. So just before I give my answer, are we going into theories and predictions next, or how are
No,
we?
that's coming up. That's coming up.
Okay.
Theories and predictions
Okay.
coming up.
Um. So questions I have. Um.
But no, the
So
question is, what's your unanswered question? You have an unanswered
un-
question for this particular episode.
so the main unanswered episode is how Braylon. I want to know how Braylon is connected to the younglings because he knows who Ahsoka is. He knows how um not how powerful, but how in tune with the Force she is. Um, I just want to know how is Braylon connected? Because and then also from episode 1 and 2, we learned that he may not have been a youngling, but he was there when Order 66 was introduced, or the order was given out. So I just want to know a little bit more of his backstory, and I think we might get that coming up because for some reason I think that his either I think he's connected either between Ahsoka or Grogu when it comes to uh, being a youngling. I think he has some kind of connection. So that's a big unanswered question
That's
for me.
okay. Um, and again, we're just rolling on because again, this episode wasn't that long. So the next thing was it really wasn't a cliffhanger, but
Hmm.
going back on what you just said about Morgan, at the end of the episode, he sends his posse out to take them on. Now, I, bruh, what are you doing? You already
Hmm.
know how badass Ahsoka is.
Hmm.
What are you going to do? Send a bunch of henchmen to go find her and take her out?
You're right.
Yeah, okay,
Good luck
dude.
with that one.
You know who she is.
Right.
You know who trained her. You know
Hmm.
how badass she is. I mean, she escaped a whole big ass battle,
Hmm.
galactic ship full of
Hmm.
clones.
Hmm.
Took on, beat Maul,
Hmm.
was trained by Anakin, and you're gonna think these knuckleheads gonna take her out. So I don't think it was really a cliffhanger. But I
Hmm.
just said I understand less is more, but I don't know if because did he send those guys to die? Because that's what's gonna happen. They're just gonna get
Right.
crushed. What
Right.
about you? What about you?
More the same.
What the same? Okay.
It was more what not only what were you thinking, but is there a end goal here? Are you just like passively giving Ahsoka time? Because for some reason I'm watching this with the thought that Brayden isn't exactly, I want to say, a nemesis. I think he's like an anti-hero for some
Mm-hmm.
reason. I'm getting anti-hero vibes from him because although he does kill, we have seen him, kill the security detail in episode 1 and 2. Um, for some reason, I think there's like a master scheme because we already determined that Ahsoka's not necessarily a Jedi. Um, Braylon isn't. He knows the ways of the dark side, but he's no Jedi either. So, you know, the whole Jedi dark force, light force is kind of up in the air. So I'm interested to see where that leads to, and if he's really an advocate for the dark side itself, or is he just an anti-hero trying to help Ahsoka along on their side, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense.
Hmm.
So, I'm gonna let you take this next one. I'm gonna let you take the next one.
Okay.
How do you compare this episode 3, with the
Hmm.
previous episodes, with episodes 1 and 2? What again? Uh, this how would you compare the two?
So this one gave me my fix. So, um, episode 1 and 2, I think if you guys go back and look at the first episode that we did, I wasn't too fond of episode 1 and 2. This is more what I am coming to expect when it comes to not only um, the how the show should be how it should be done, but how we expect Star Wars to unveil. You have things that are going on now, but there are critical ties to previous films and shows previously. And I just love how not only do they mirror each other, because I think they did in episode 1 and 2, they did their due diligence of merging the animated lore of Star Wars to the real life, motion picture world, if you will. Whereas when you now we're instead of linking it visually, we're linking the previous movies and TV shows into this current show. So all of the Ahsoka, we said this in episode 1 and 2. This is not a standoff where you can just watch this by itself and have
Mm-hmm.
complete understanding. You have to go back and do your research. You have to go back and watch other things just for something to make sense. And I love that.
Yeah.
Make me go back and make me, look at things with a fine tooth comb or with the magnifying glass, and those little nuggets, they just pay off in the end when certain stuff does come up.
Okay. So me comparing the so far this episode, again, I like it.
Hmm.
It was more like I said earlier. It was more. We're now getting into the story,
Hmm.
and it's building towards. Well, we as we know again. Unfortunately, or fortune is up to you how you feel about it. We know Thrawn does come back. Now we know
Hmm.
how he comes back, and then how because they're already setting up a Ahsoka season 2. So for me, this episode started. It got rid of the. You get we know everyone's caught up now. Let's start getting into it. So that's
Hmm.
what this is. Now I'm gonna let you take this one. The next one is um your theories or your predictions.
Hmm.
So go ahead. What is your so far? What is your theories and predictions so far? What's going to happen?
Okay, okay. So for whatever reason, I'm watching this. I'm watching Ahsoka with the mindset that there's something that I'm watching passively that is very blunt, but I'm not paying it. That I think they're giving it to us, but it's not blunt. It's not in your face.
Okay.
Just remember that standpoint. Okay, so let's start out. I'm gonna start out just full go here. I think theory time. Theory time. I think that Wren is going to eventually be. I think she's going to fall to the dark side,
Oh damn.
and
Okay.
and and
Wow.
hear me out.
Okay. I
So
mean, yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
this is why I think so, because if you okay, so we saw firsthand. Okay, so in Rebels we saw how the dark saber came to be, right?
Yes.
Ren was able, before she gave the dark saber up, she was able to actually wield the dark saber. She was able to actually train with it and wield it. Um, we saw how difficult, and in comparison, we saw how difficult it is to do when Mando, because when Mando had the dark saber, I mean, he gave it his all just to be able to hold it, not even use it in a battle, just to be able to hold it.
Right.
And when we first saw Ren with the dark saber, she was able to actually train with it, and for her to have that kind of capability, I think to me it gives a little bit of she was pulling from her dark side, not
Mm.
necessarily a force, not necessarily using the force to wield it. I think she was pulling from the dark side. Also, with that, you know, she she's a Mandalorian first. Even before she, will be a potential Jedi, she's still a Mandalorian at heart. So I think her true calling is the Mandalorian way, which gives her, knowledge about weapons and stuff. But I just think that her tapping into the her trying to access the Force is going to go toward the dark side in order for her to use it. I think that in order for because with Anakin, I think with Anakin, his he was able to propel his Force powers even more when he did accept the dark side. He was more powerful as a Darth than he would have been as a Jedi. And
Mm.
I feel like that is kind of how the direction Ren is going in. That maybe her destiny isn't to be a Jedi per se, but her falling into the ways of the because also okay, theory time. I know I'm going all over the place, but
No
this is
problem.
how
Yeah.
my
Go ahead.
mind
Go ahead.
works.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
So when Anakin fell to the dark side because Palpatine told him that in order to save Padme, he would have to succumb to the dark side. That if he wanted to save her, the dark side could save her. There's nothing that the Jedi or the light side can do for him, but the dark side can save him. Or could save
Right.
Padme, right?
Right. Right. Right.
So
Right.
Ahsoka Wren, they're trying to find Thrawn, but they're also trying to find Ezra. We
Yes.
know that Wren and Ezra have some kind of kind of history, um, where it's not just cut and dry. This is just our friend. There's a deep tie to that, and I think that in order for them to not only find it but to rescue and save him, she's going to have to tap into the dark side in order to do so. So I think that's my theory. I think that
Okay.
Ren is eventually going to be. You heard it here on the first word. I think
Okay.
that Ren is going to fall to the dark side.
Okay. Well, I vehemently disagree, but I'm going to let you
Okay.
go with. I'm going to go with my prediction. Again, I think I've
Mhm.
been talking about it throughout this episode. Is that this is the foundation of a new Jedi Order. My
Mm.
prediction is that Ahsoka is going to become the Yoda of the new Jedi Order, and to
Mhm.
include Grogu. I
Mhm.
think they're going to bring Grogu back in a certain sense, because to me, Mando with Grogu with the Mandalorian. At
Mhm.
first, and again, we're going back and forth here with different Star Wars
Mhm.
um, um, shows, but Grogu, the last season of Mando, I don't believe Grogu was supposed to be in it. He was
Mm.
supposed to stay with Luke, but the
Mhm.
fans were like, "What are you doing? You got to
Right.
have these two together." So they brought him
Mhm.
back, and
Mhm.
he has some good, inspiring parts in there. But I think Grogu fits better with Ahsoka,
Mhm.
and I think somehow that Grogu is going to become the New York, because he's unconventional too, and
Mhm.
he is, again, he's with the Mandalorians, and again the
Mhm.
whole Mandalorian thing is a theme throughout this new Jedi Order. I mean, and I'm
Mhm.
using that just so everyone can understand, the
Mhm.
context I'm putting it in. So I think Ahsoka is going to be the harbinger of the new Jedi Order, but the new Jedi Order is going to be you. What's your strength? And then I'm going to teach you. We're going to then let the Jedi way flow that way. Again, you're Mandalorian. Your strength is weapons. Well, let's teach you how to use weapons and the Jedi way, so you can combine both strengths together. So that's my prediction.
Well, you again, and I kind of got this mindset back in episode 1 and 2, where Ren is both Mandalorian and Jedi, but Ren was born Mandalorian and then learn the ways of the Jedi. Whereas Grogu was born in the ways of the Jedi, born and raised in the way of the Jedi, but then adapted the Mandalorian way. So we can see that both of them actually are on almost the same
Trajectory.
parallel trajectory.
Mm-hmm.
Where Mando is Grogu's master.
Mm-hmm.
He's the Padawan, and Ahsoka is the master, and Ren is her Padawan. So
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
we see those and I think this might be the new, and it goes into my theory where this might be the new balancing of the Force, where
Mm-hmm.
I think that, like I say, I think Ren will become the dark side and eventually maybe a Sith.
Oh, damn!
And
Oh my gosh!
I did. I just,
Wow!
I just elevated her. I did.
Why were you have? Oh my goodness! Okay,
I
okay,
gave her upgrade, but
okay.
I do. For some reason, I'm telling you, I do. But also, when it comes to this mystery, I still do think that that mystery person is Ezra, because it's just way too much adding up. Ezra doesn't have his lightsaber. Ren has his lightsaber, but this Inquisitor now, he has a double-edged lightsaber. He's able to. We've seen him use the Force in Episode 2 when fighting Ahsoka. He's actually taking orders from. Gosh, I forgot the Padawan's name, but he's taking orders from her um, when they were trying to find Ahsoka on the planet. It's just a lot of things that are drawing me to that narrative. I do think that that's still Ezra, but for whatever reason, again, I'm going off path. But I think
No,
that
no.
um, that Ren is going to she's going to have to be use the dark side of the Force in order to get to her full potential. I don't think the light side of the Force is where she's going. I think she's going to learn the Jedi way, but I think somewhere along the way, she's going to have to tap into the dark side, and that's going to overtake her.
Okay.
Just and it could be harmless, just like it was for Anakin. If we go back for a quick second and we look at his timeline, the way that it was executed, and that's why Palpatine was actually rather genius, and we get that genius from Thrawn. Thrawn is that type of manipulator where he gets inside your head, he gets inside your culture, and he learns your deficiencies. He knows what you're good at, what you're not good at. Palpatine was the same way. Palpatine knew that Anakin was weak when it came to Padme. He knew that, he was in love and he had other ambitions outside of the Jedi way, and he played into that.
Yeah.
And not only did he play into that, but he made Anakin choose between the ones that he loved and conventional wisdom that he was brought up to believe in. And
Right.
I think that that's the same thing that Ren is going through. Whereas, you have this way that you were taught growing up, but then you have this new way, not new way, but you have this other way that you've been introduced to by Ahsoka, and you're at a conflict with yourself. Now you're not in peace. Now you're not in balance with the Force, and that we learn from Yoda, that is like a sign number one of the dark side. When you're not in when you're not in balance, or you have certain things about you that you're not certain of, that uncertainty can go toward the dark side. So
Yeah.
I'm wondering, that's something, again, we will put a pin on it. It's
Well,
I'm
well, you again, not to just to because I like doing I like playing the middle ground here.
mhm,
I think what you're saying is based in a lot, because even in this episode and even in episode 1 and 2, there's something that happened and they
mhm,
have not told about it yet. Talked about why did Ahsoka stop training Wren, and
mhm,
she even said it today. I mean, not today. She even said it during this episode that that you are that you're trying to rush it, and your frustration leads to
yes,
you being unbalanced, and then
yes.
that's a path. So I mean I don't think that. So just to bolster your predictions, I don't think your prediction are so far off. I disagree with it, but I can understand your mindset.
So let me ask you this
Yeah.
episode, how many
Hmm.
how many lightsabers do you get?
Well,
Scale to
you're going right into. I was just about to go into episode ranking.
mhm,
Again, for the audience, we're ranking 5 as the top, and zero is the bottom. For me,
mhm.
I give this episode a strong 4. I give it
Okay.
a four lifesavers for everything I said before. Not to, for the less is more, for the fact that Ahsoka is, let her Padawan learn from your Padawan. A good
Mhm,
a good leader, a good leader learns from the people he's training too. And
mhm.
so all the things I said, for the since we've been started this particular episode, that's why I gave it a 4 lightsabers. What about you? How many lightsabers you give it?
So if you guys watched, if you guys watched episode our first episode, the first word episode, um, I gave it a 3 and a 3.5, mainly
Yes.
because there was a lot of like standing around, little ho hum, Ahsoka doing the rubbing of the chin, and it was just too much of that. It was
Got it.
way too much of that. This one, from open and jump, we get fight scenes, we get chase downs, we get
Mm-hmm.
we get a little bit of everything. We
Mm-hmm.
get backstory, we get callbacks. It gave us a lot, and to your point, they gave us a lot in a condensed amount of time. But this is where it gets okay. So all in all, I give it a 4 lightsaber, and the reason why I gave it a 4 is it has nothing to do with Star Wars,
Okay.
nothing at all.
Okay.
It this episode for I, the audience doesn't know. My dad and I, we're kind of like um, kind of linked in a way where I can watch something and I can see it in someone else's eyes, and I can see this episode in my dad's eyes where a lot of the Japanese samurai, that kind of influence is rooted in this episode. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it is rooted. And if you guys haven't watched Star Wars Visions, I also encourage you, behoove you actually, to watch that, because that also it's soaked and saturated in Japanese lore, and I got that from this episode.
Mm-hmm.
It's so it's so refreshing
Mm-hmm.
to
Mm-hmm.
get something so obviously Star Wars is placed far in the future from our future, but it's something that they were able to draw something so basic. You know, samurais, Japanese culture have been around for hundreds, not oh, probably thousands,
Centuries.
centuries, and to have something so basic be placed in such a technological advanced um, world building setting, it means a lot and it says a lot, and it's just that kind of put it over top to me. Now the reason why I didn't get a 5 is because now I wanted this in an hour, 10
Oh wow.
hour. I wanted it stretched out. I wanted a
You wanted
full
more.
episode.
You wanted
I
more.
wanted
You wanted
more.
more.
I wanted more. So I had to drop it down a little bit. But
Okay.
if we get this kind of content in the time span that we got in 1 and 2, that'll be a hit for me.
Okay.
That'll be a hit.
Okay. And so the last thing we do here on the first word is I want you to tell the audience this scene right here.
Mhm.
This scene right here in episode 3 did it for me. So what is that scene for you? What is that scene like? This scene right here encapsulated was my favorite scene. This scene right here, what was that for you?
Again, I have to take it back to when Ahsoka was training Wren on the ship.
Okay.
Um, I think that it was very soft. It was very subtle. She didn't do too much, but again, in that situation, you really don't have to.
Right.
We already know that, or Ren already knows she can't see. Um, so for Ahsoka to be able to not only train her on trusting the Force, because it was hard at first, but again, she got easy. It got easier for her as time went on, but we just see Ahsoka's patience level starting to rise, and
Mm-hmm.
she's starting to understand, like you said earlier, she's starting to understand her Padawan a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then not only that, but then her Padawan is starting to adjust
Mm-hmm.
to Ahsoka's teaching style. Yes, it's going to be frustrating. You know, I'm the aggressive Padawan where Ahsoka's more of the laid back master.
Mm-hmm.
um, it's just those soft subtleties, and it happened within the span. I think that scene was like 6, 7 minutes tops.
Yeah.
But that was something very subtle. But I think it made the episode because we haven't seen that in such a long time. The newer Star Wars movies, everybody's has these incredible force wielding powers to start off with, and you know they don't have to earn or understand their power. It's just it's given. And
Okay.
in this situation, I feel like we're on the journey, just like I think that's what we fell in love with the main characters, Anakin, Luke. um, we've seen their progression. We've seen how over a period of time how hard it was for them, how they had to earn their power, how they had to understand their power, how it could be taken away from them, and you have to regain it back. Those building blocks were made us love those
Yeah,
particular
those characters.
characters,
Mm-hmm.
and that's how it feels with this one.
Okay.
We're learning to love Ren, but we're also learning to understand Ahsoka.
Right. Okay. So for me, again, it's since it's such a short episode, and I feel like I'm repeating myself. I'm being repetitive. But
Mhm.
again, this scene right here for me that got me was when it clicked in Ahsoka's head that, look, because again, my looking at these episodes as I'm looking at it as your father, as Hot Nerd
Mm-hmm.
father, and I think what keeps me fresh is letting you guys teach me, because I've always don't want to be one of those old curmudgeons stuck in his old ways, never learned this is the way I do it, I'm always doing it this way, blah blah blah. So for me, why I said this, give you my reason why I said this scene right here, when Ahsoka lets Wren teach her, okay, let's do it your way, and it worked. Again, it gives me, it makes me feel refreshed, because that's my theory, is let me learn from you, let me learn from Hot Sid. You guys are my Padawans, but that doesn't mean that you don't have valuable information to
Right.
give me so I can learn. So that's the end of this particular episode, Ahsoka number 3. Thank everyone for participating, listening to, and watching this podcast. Again, thumbs up to Hot Nerd Sid for giving us this platform so we can give you, the listeners, our insight to this whole world building. And next week we will be putting out another video podcast for Ahsoka number 4. I'm Phil from the First Word,
And I'm Phil Parker.
and we will see you on the next one.
May the
Bye-bye.
Force be with you.
Force be with you, like that. I like it. Let's lean into the nerdness. May the Force be with you. Bye.
Peace out.